You remind me of many years ago when it was very hectic at home. People were hanging out outside my house and tearing pieces off the shrubbery, and the phones were ringing. And I had a request to come to speak at a college in Billings, Montana. And very small town. I thought, I think I'll go because thank you. I think I'll go because it'll be very quiet and I'll get to relax. And I like talking to college students. I find people interesting. So I agreed to this date, and I flew to Billings, Montana, where I'm looking forward to a very, very personal kind of experience with the students there. And I was driven to a motel after I landed at the airport. I was driven to a motel. People were waiting for me to put away my clothes and have a few minutes to myself. And I wasn't in the room more than 4 or 5 minutes when the telephone rang. And I couldn't imagine who would be calling me, but I picked up the phone and said hello. And a young female voice said, "Hi, is this Mr. Nimoy?" I said, "Yes, it is." She said, "Oh my God, it's so exciting. I got you on the telephone. This is wonderful. Oh, I can't believe I've actually got you and I'm talking to you." I said, "Yes, you are." I said, "Who are you?" She said, "My name is Mary." I said, "Mary, where are you calling me from?" She said, "I'm calling you from Denver, Colorado." I said, "How did you find me?" She said, "Well, somebody called me, a friend called me and said you were going to be in Billings, so I called all the hotels and motels. There are only 3. So I said, "Well, I congratulate you on your resourcefulness." Thank you very much for calling, and thank you for your support. I'm glad you enjoyed Star Trek and Mr. Spock, and I've got to go. There's some people waiting for me, but thanks for calling. And we hung up, and I finished my business. 2 or 3 minutes later, I'm headed for the door, and the phone rang again. Wow, this is really interesting. I picked it up, I said hello, and another thing, "Oh, hi, Mr. Nimoy, how are you?" I said, "I'm very well, how are you?" "Oh, I'm so happy to talk to you." And I said, "Who are you?" She said, "My name is Sally." I said, "Sally, where are you calling me from?" She said, "From St. Louis." "St. Louis? How did you find me?" She said, "My friend Mary called me from Denver." I don't know, something about Washington made me think about that. Okay, who's got a question? Yes, sir. Like that, I've done a lot of what? Coverage? Oh, coverage of songs? Yes. Yeah, okay. I did record several albums, long time ago. Thank you. You're the one who bought them. Thank you. While we were making the series in the 60s, somebody came to me from the management people.
Oh, he's Scotland.
He bought one too. Bring it up here. Bring it up.
Sign it for you.
So they said there's a gentleman in New York who's going to record some music from Star Trek and put out an album, and your picture's going to be on the cover. And he wants to know if you want to be involved. And I thought, well, if I'm on the cover, I should be inside too. So that's how it began. I'm recording. If you don't mind, do you play Live long and prosper. So they said, I said I would like to record some stuff, and we put together. This album, oh come on. Put together this album, Mr. Spock's Music from Outer Space. There were I think 10 or 12 cuts on this album, and I'm on about 5 or 6 of the cuts. We did Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Earth. Where is Love? That's a pretty song. Where is Love?
Sing it.
Just sing it, please.
There was a piece on here called, I think I'm ducking the issue. A piece on here called Visit to a Sad Planet, which became quite popular on radio and sold a lot of albums. And so they asked me to do some more. And we ended up doing about 5 or 6 albums. And I had a good time with it. And then after we were all done with the albums, about a year later, the man who had produced them came to me with an interesting idea. He said there's a trilogy called the Ring Trilogy about the Hobbits. And so I read the books, and I'm talking about, I think around 1968 or 1969. About 40 years ago, we recorded the Hobbit song, Bilbo Baggins. And now I'm going to sign these, but this must stop. And it's still around. Have you heard it lately? What was it? In Middle Earth, in the land of Shire, there's a brave little hobbit whom we all admire. White, fuzzy woolen toes. He lives in a hobbit hole and everybody knows him. Bilbo Baggins, the greatest little hobbit of them all. That's it. Where's the young lady? Who's these? Are those yours? Okay. Boy, are you a lucky one today. No, you can't have them.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay, question? Yes, sir. No, I don't plan to do any more directing. My creative process now is mostly concentrated on my photography. I am doing some appearances on the Fringe TV series, which we're filming in Vancouver. I did an episode about 6 weeks ago that will be airing in October, and I will do at least one more, and then we'll see how it goes. But I'm enjoying that. But my photography is where my most concentrated effort is creatively. I have a new project called Secret Selves, which is a number of portraits which I've photographed, people I've photographed in Massachusetts, and that will open as an exhibition at the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art next year in North Adams, Massachusetts, if any of you are in that area. And you can see the portraits on my website. The website has a very complicated name. You better maybe want to write this down. It's very unusual. It's called LeonardNimoyPhotography.com. So that's the website that you can see my photography work there. I've published 2 books of photographs, one called Shekhinah, which was about the feminine aspect of God according to Jewish mysticism, and the other was called The Full Body Project, which is about full-bodied women who are happy in their skins. So, have you got the book? You do? The lady from Washington has the book. Wow. Not only you ask good questions, you buy good books, too.
One of your series is the black and white one and the hand series.
The black and white series and the hand series, yeah. They're all on the website. Thank you. So that's where I'm spending most of my creative energy, but I'm enjoying working on Fringe. Yes, sir, here. Thank you. unfinished episodes of Star Trek? You have more information about Star Trek than I do. I don't know about these episodes. I really don't. This is the first I've heard of it. I have a feeling you're going to be in my life forever. I don't know. I would be happy to receive the information, but I don't know what you're referring to. Yes, the lady here. Yes. Oh, interesting question. I wrote a book called I Am Not Spock in the early 70s. And the I Am Spock was written sometime in the mid-80s, I think. I think I'm right about that. It's been some time. Well, the process, I'll take a minute to explain that arc and that process of my thinking. The first book, I was publishing some books of photography and poems, and with a small company in Northern California, San Francisco, and they said to me, would you be interested in writing a book about your Star Trek experiences? So I thought, well, okay, I'll try that. And I sat down to write various essays and chapters for a potential book. I wrote about how I got the job as Spock, my life before Star Trek, how Star Trek affected my life, how the character was built and how I grew into the character of Spock and how it affected my life and so forth. And while I was doing this, I had this experience in a San Francisco airport one day. A lady recognized me. She had a little boy with her. He must have been 8 or 9 years old. And she marched him over in front of me. And she said, look who's standing here right in front of you. And the little boy stared at me, and there was no recognition. And she said, this is your favorite character. You watch him on television every week. And he stared, and he was bewildered. And she said, this is Mr. Spock. And he didn't get it. And I sympathized with him because it must have been confusing to him. I didn't have my ears, and my hair wasn't right, and I wasn't in costume. And what would I be doing as Spock in a San Francisco airport? Well, I found that really interesting. It got me thinking about character and actor, the character and the actor, and where's the crossover between the two. She was using a sort of a language shortcut. What she really was saying to the little boy was, this is the actor who portrays Mr. Spock in Star Trek. But she didn't say that. She said, this is Mr. Spock. And that was confusing. So I wrote a chapter on that idea, on that subject. And I explained that I am not Mr. Spock. I am an actor. I was born in Boston. Mr. Spock was not. My parents were Russian immigrants. Mr. Spock's parents were not Russian immigrants. And my father was a barber. Spock's father was not a barber. So there are differences. And I wrote about how an actor begins to find his way to take on the persona of a character, and how that a character becomes part of you and how you become identified with that character. So I thought it was an interesting chapter. I finished the book, I handed it in, the publisher said, what would you like to call the book? And I said, I think I'm most interested in that aspect, but from the actor's point of view, I think it's an interesting chapter. Maybe we should call the book I Am Not Spock. And he said, well, that's a negative title, and negative titles don't usually sell well. So I said, sure, what about Gone with the Wind? So I won the argument, and he said, it's your book, we'll call it whatever you like, and we call it I'm Not Spock. It was a big mistake. It was a mistake. I made a mistake. This book came out at a time when there was a tremendous hunger for more Star Trek, and we were not making it. We had finished the series in 1966, 7, and 8. The final episodes went on in 1969. This book came out about 1971 or 2 or thereabouts. And there was a tremendous hunger for more Star Trek, and the Star Trek episodes were on in reruns, but there was no new production. And the feeling was that the reason there was no new production was because I wouldn't do Star Trek anymore, because I was refusing to be identified with Spock, saying, I'm not Spock. So, that was not the case at all. It was not my intention. That was not the reality. There was simply no Star Trek being produced. So it was a problem for me. For several years, people were angry and upset, and I would get nasty mail, and who do you think you are? And you're preventing us from having what we want and what we love and what we need to have. And we're we're addicted to Star Trek, and you're preventing us from having more Star Trek. And it was silly and it was terrible. And then, about 1977, there was George Lucas did us a tremendous favor, and he produced a movie called Star Wars, and I went to see it, and I was sitting in this theater with a packed theater, people screaming and cheering and having a wonderful time, and I thought to myself, I think I'm going to be getting a call from Paramount Studios pretty soon. And sure enough, they called. They said, we want to make a Star Trek movie. We'd like you to be in it. And of course, I was in it. I've been in every Star Trek product up until The Next Generation. And so that all went away, all that anger and frustration went away, and we began to make the Star Trek movies. And then, after doing that for a while, I thought there are some new Star Trek stories to tell. Wouldn't it be nice to put that whole issue away? And I decided I would write a book called I Am Spock and talk about my most recent experiences making the movies and so forth. So that's how the whole thing happened. I hope you found that interesting. It was a long answer to a short question. Your father is 86 years old, yes. He's cranky? Really? Where is he now? He's at home. Oh, here comes the question, okay. SpongeBob SquarePants. I'm not in that. This is the question now? So that's the question. Why does he like Star Trek? He likes Star Trek because it is about humanity's struggles. Very profound. Okay. He's right. He's right. Absolutely. No, I think it's true. I think one of the most important aspects thematically about Star Trek is that it's about a team of people working together to solve problems. And sometimes those are struggles, and usually they're successful most of the time. And people like to see this team of people working together to solve the struggle, to solve these problems, to deal with these struggles. Yes, I think that's a good way of putting it. Thank you. Thank you. My best to your father. Yes, the gentleman on the aisle. Well, actually, I didn't actually audition for Star Trek, and that was the interesting thing about it. I was acting in various TV shows and doing fairly well. I was working fairly steady. After about 15 years in Hollywood, my career was moving along nicely. And I acted in a television show called The Lieutenant, which starred Gary Lockwood. And I did an episode of that. And then after it was done, my agent called me and said, Mr. Roddenberry, who was the producer of that series, called and said that he has in mind a role for you in a science fiction project that he's developing. He'll be doing a pilot film sometime in the future. Well, that's very flattering, but there are a lot of maybes between that phone call and what has to happen to become a series and a job. He has to sell the pilot idea, the pilot has to be made, and then the network has to buy the series, and they have to continue to like you enough to keep you in the series. There are all kinds of ifs and maybes along the way, but that's how it happened. I got a call a while later, Mr. Rudman would like to meet with you, and I went to see him, and I thought, well, now I'm going to be auditioned. And on the contrary, he began showing me through the various departments. He said, this is what the costumes are going to look like. Here are the drawings of the Enterprise and the various other sets, and here are some of the props. We're going to have a communicator, we're going to have a tricorder, and a phaser, and Mr. Spock will have pointed ears, and I began to understand that he was selling me on doing this job, and I thought, if I keep my mouth shut, I'm going to go to work here. So that's the way it happened, and obviously it all worked out quite wonderfully, but I never was auditioned. And you asked me if I knew what I was getting into. No, I did not. I didn't. I had no idea. All I knew was that I was going to have a job for a while and I could support my family. When I met Zachary Quinto, the new Spock in the new Star Trek movie, the very first thing I said to him was, do you know what you're getting yourself into? He said, I'm not sure. He's a very good and intelligent actor. He's very good. I thought he's wonderful in the movie. I'm very, very pleased with his performance. Yes, sir. I was very moved watching this movie. As a matter of fact, I saw a little bit of it again. I watched a little bit again yesterday on the airplane flying here from Los Angeles. And it's a very moving experience for me. This is the truth, no joke. To see what we began so long ago, all of us, Bill Shatner and DeForest Kelley and Walter Koenig and George Takei and Michelle Nichols and all of these wonderful people, and the writers and the producers and the directors, to see that work carried on, to see that baton passed to this very talented bunch of people, talented writers, talented directors, talented actors, and wardrobe people, costumes, this massive production, gigantic scale that we never could afford to do, that they can now afford to do because the audience is there now. It was very moving to me, very moving to me. And the scenes that I played with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto, very touching to me to see that character move on like that. And at the end, when Quinto comes on board and offers his services as a science officer, and Kirk says it'll be an honor, I thought, wow, that's very touching, to see that happen. I'm very proud of that movie and the people who made it. I think they did great work. It means a lot to me to have that perpetuated. It means a lot. Yes, the lady in the aisle. What happened to your hair? You what? What'd she say? Natural color, is it? Are you serious? Does your mom know about that? Yeah.
Coming into the role of Mr. Spock as a Jewish actor, do you feel there's any kinship between Jewish culture and Balkan culture?
Okay, I want to make sure I understand this. As a Jewish actor, coming into that role as a Jewish actor, yes. I never saw myself as a Jewish actor. I happen to be Jewish and I'm an actor. So you want to know how the culture crossed over? Yeah, I wrote in my first book, I think, in I Am Not Spock. I wrote about that, about the fact that I felt alienated as a young adolescent teenager. I was Jewish growing up in a very Catholic city. Boston is a very Irish Catholic city, and in fact I went to Boston College for a brief time in Jesuit school, where the Jesuits took good care of me, and I was blessed a lot by the Jesuits. I was comfortable with it. I'm fine with that. I'm very relaxed with all of that. But what I found useful was my understanding of what Spock was experiencing as an alienated character, because as the movie tells us, his mother is human, his father's Vulcan, so on the Vulcan planet he's considered a half-breed, he's a sort of an outcast, doesn't belong really on Earth because he's this strange alien creature. So he finds a home in Starfleet where his alien aspect is acceptable, and he's a member of Starfleet, a full-fledged member of a ship in Starfleet. I found it useful to have had to bring my alienated experience as a young boy into that character, and I found myself at home with Spock. And then it's sure you probably know the story about how this began, but I'll tell it to you briefly. We're doing an episode called Amok Time. I thought it was a wonderful episode, beautifully written by Theodore Sturgeon, and very well directed. And it was the first time the words "live long and prosper" were spoken, was in that episode. And we're going to Vulcan to meet Spock's Vulcan appears, and Spock is betrothed to be married. He's in the mating season. It happens once every 7 years. Yeah. It's quite an event, I'll tell you. And well worth waiting for. So we go to Vulcan, and I was particularly keen to find possibilities to develop the Vulcan culture, because this was the first time we're seeing other Vulcans. First time we're going to the Vulcan planet and seeing another. We'd only seen Spock. The only Vulcan was the only Vulcan we'd seen up to that point. So we get to the planet, and I'm to meet T'Pau, the lady who's going to officiate at the ceremony, and she's a very important figure. We discover that she's the matriarch of the planet. She says, "Welcome home, Spock," and I say something like, "Well, it's nice to be here, and thank you." And I said to the director, I think we should find something that Vulcans do when they meet. What is it about the Vulcan people? He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, humans shake hands with each other, and military people salute each other. Asian people often bow to each other when they meet. What do Vulcans do?" And he said, "Well, what do you like to do?" So I thought back to my Jewish cultural heritage when I was a kid, going to the high holiday services with my family. There comes a point in the service where the congregation is blessed by a group of gentlemen who are known as Kohanim. They are the members of the priestly tribe. They bless the congregation with a blessing that translates into, we find it in the New Testament as well, "May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his countenance to shine upon you. May the Lord turn his graciousness unto you and grant you peace." And when they do this, the congregation is standing. I'm with my father and my brother and my grandfather. Women are segregated at the Orthodox service. Women are upstairs in the balcony, my mother and grandmother. And we're standing, and my father said to me, "Don't look." Well, I was 8 years old, and I peeked. I wanted to see what's going on, you know. And in fact, the whole congregation got their eyes covered with their hands and their prayer shawls over their heads. And I hear this chanting, this wailing sound, these gentlemen up in front of the congregation chanting in Hebrew, which I didn't understand. But I was curious about what they were doing up there, and I looked and peeked, and I saw them doing this to the congregation. It's an absolutely magical thing. Every time I do that, flashbulbs go off. Every time. So I had no idea what it was all about, but I was doing as I was told, except that I was peeking, and I'm not supposed to. And I was fascinated by this gesture, and I learned to do it. I didn't know it would come in handy someday, but anyway, I said to the director, why don't we have Vulcans do this? And he said, he had no idea what it was, and he said, "Okay, fine, we'll do that." So we went to the actress who was playing T'Pau, and the director said, "Leonard will do that," and he would respond. And we had to help her because she hadn't practiced it like I had. So she couldn't really do it very well. She held her right hand ready with her left hand. And when the time came when I raised my hand, she was ready and she raised hers, and that's how we got it. So, hi. Can you do that? Look at this. Bravo. What did you say? Why do Vulcans have their emotions? Hide their emotions? Oh. Well, in the Vulcan history, emotions caused a lot of trouble. So they decided to do away with emotions and function only logically, using their brain more than their feelings, to avoid difficulties and avoid trouble, wars and things like that. But that's a very good question. Thank you. So anyway, that's how and why we got it in the show. I learned later that this is the shape of the letter Shin in the Hebrew alphabet. It's the first letter in a number of very important words in the Hebrew language. It's the first letter in the word Shaddai, which is God's name, and that's why they do it in this ceremony. They use a symbol of God's name as they're blessing the congregation. Okay, thank you. And it's also the first letter in the word Shalom, which means peace. So it's a very important word, and that's why they're using that gesture. I also found out much later that you're not supposed to look, because the belief is that during that ceremony, the Shekhinah, the feminine aspect of God comes into the sanctuary to bless the congregation. And she being a deity, she gives off such a powerful light, you could be injured if you see that light, so you protect yourself by covering your eyes. I peeked and I survived, but anyway, that's the story, and that's why I published a book called Shekinah, which is about that feminine aspect of God, photographs of the feminine deity. That's the story. Just 3 days, 2 or 3 days after that episode went on the air, when we saw this for the first time, I was in Cleveland for an appearance on a weekend, and we stopped at a traffic light, driving, stopped at a traffic light, and a car pulled up beside us. Very pretty young lady recognized me, and she waved at me like that with the gesture. I was really excited because that's the first time I ever saw her come back at me. It's been many times since then, but that was the first time. And I rolled down the window and I said to her, "Can you do it with your left hand?" And she got about that far and she said, "I'm sorry, I speak it with an accent." Yes, the lady there. I'm having trouble hearing you. Why do I think?
Why did you choose to be an actor instead of a musician or photographer when you were younger?
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I began acting when I was very young. I grew up in Boston, as I mentioned. There was a neighborhood settlement house and a little theater where I used to hang out as a kid after school and on weekends. And one day somebody said to me, "Go into that room, there's some people want to hear you sing a song." And I sang something simple, like "Happy Birthday." I don't know what it was. But I found myself on stage in a production of Hansel and Gretel. And I could do it. I could remember lines, and I could be on the stage. And I acted in children's theater for some time, and then moved into adult theater. And it was just something that I did. I enjoyed doing it, and I was able to do it. And then one day, I finally decided this is what I want to do with my life. And I went away. I left home and went across the country to California to study acting and to try to develop an acting career. So I got focused on it early. Around the same time, I did become interested in photography, and I always maintained that interest in photography. And after I had done 3 seasons of Star Trek and 2 seasons on Mission Impossible, I actually went back to school at UCLA in California to study photography seriously, to see if I might want to change careers. Because I thought I've come a long way with my acting, and I'm very happy with all of that. But I should give myself a chance to explore other things. And I decided that I wanted to do what's known as fine art photography. I didn't want to do commercial photography, so I thought I'd better stick with the acting to make a living and do the photography when and if I want to. And then out of the photography came the poetry, and out of Star Trek came the music, and one thing and another. And I've always loved going back to the theater, so for many years I did a lot of theater work all across the United States. But the acting seemed to be the thing that preoccupied my attention most of the time. I became a director because the opportunity was there, and people used to say to me, "You should be directing." And for a long time I thought I was being insulted. I thought they don't like my acting. And then finally when the opportunity came, I decided to do that. I guess I'm kind of restless. And I moved from one thing to another now, although, as I said, primarily my interest is photography. But that was sort of the pattern, the way the whole thing evolved. Yes, sir. Say again, please.
You talked about phases and tricorders. I was wondering what kind of...
Phases and tricorders, what?
I was wondering what your favorite technology that's emerged in the last couple of years.
The technology? Well, I really would like to be able to be beamed from place to place. It's tiresome going through airports. You know, if you can avoid that, it's a good thing. It's a long way off. I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetime. I kind of doubt it. But a lot of the technology from Star Trek has found its way into our daily lives, obviously. We carry these little things that have so much information, so much communicative power that we used to call tricorders. You know, it's all right there in the palm of your hand now. It all started with a flip telephone, and now we have tricorders. So we call them, what do we call them? Blackberries, blueberries, strawberries, we call them all whatever we call them. So, yes, yeah. I'm not hearing. You have to talk much louder. I have a hearing loss. Vulcan, what? Can I speak Vulcan? Yes. I love those questions. Yes.
It's an honor meeting you and seeing you. I have a long history, but my wife is Trekkie, but I have not been a Trekkie or not. So it's my first time here, and I really saw the movie, and I felt I relate a lot to Spock. And I just wanted to ask you, from so many different talents you have, and as a man of wisdom, what keeps you grounded day to day?
What's the last?
What keeps you grounded?
What keeps me grounded?
Yes.
The question is, with all my other activities in the arts and so forth, what keeps me grounded? So what really is a profound question. The first thing I think of is my family. I'm very much involved with my family and care deeply about my relationship with my wife and my kids and my grandchildren, and I have a great-grandchild. I consider myself a very blessed person. I have been given great opportunities, far more than I ever dreamed of. And I'm very grateful for that. There have been times when people wondered if I was burdened by Star Trek and Spock, because I did write a book called I'm Not Spock, and people misunderstood it. But that's not the case at all. It's given me great opportunities to do all kinds of wonderful creative work, and to be able to give back to my community and to the planet in various ways, which I'm very pleased to be able to do. And the love that comes at me constantly brings on great humility. It really does. It brings on great humility. So those are the things that I think about when I'm asked a question like that. It touches me very deeply to know that I'm able to communicate a lot to people, and I take that as a very serious responsibility, that I should try to put out my best possible work and touch people with ideas that can enhance and improve their lives, if it's at all possible, to educate, to inspire, as was done to me when I was a kid. I grew up in a city that was full of culture, full of theater and the arts and so forth, and I was surrounded by education and all of these inspirational people that I was put in touch with. I found myself being very blessed to have that opportunity, and I wanted to become one of those people that bring that back to the community. That keeps me grounded. I thank you for your question. I have to go. May all live long and prosper. I love you.